Okay, welcome back to Box to the Battlefield. And as you know, last time we were together, I was making these little puddles. And I accidentally scratched the base of one of the puddles. Um, Easy thing to do. I was just mucking around and touched it up the wrong way. And you can see it on here. There's right underneath the branch, right underneath our tree there, there's a little black dot, which is the paint that I put underneath the buff. Tamiya number 57. And I exposed it, and so now I'm going to fix that problem. I'll show you how to fix it. Because all these little things, all the little things that I do here and Dave does in his videos are basic techniques, but sometimes they just don't work out. Sometimes Dave has a struggle with his decals, and on and on we go. But what's important for you guys to understand is that you can't ruin these models. There's no sense in throwing them against the wall and oh no, my puddles have been spoiled and all that sort of stuff. There's always a solution. So what I'm going to do is just show you a simple solution. What we did, as you guys know, is we poured Tamiya clear into the puddles to make water. All I'm going to do is just paint right over top of that clear with our buff again. Wait off camera a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes, to let this buff, settle down. And then I'm just going to pour the clear back in again. But at least our black little mark will come on. So I'll just take 2 minutes to show you how to do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave our poor little tiger tank that we've been borrowing from Peter Loffer for a stand-in for mine, and get back to mine and show you how to put the track on and expose some of the, just bring it back. We haven't seen it in a couple weeks, and it's almost ready and it's almost completed. So what we'll do is we'll say goodbye to this tiger tank, which I can't thank Peter enough for laying it to us. And once again, I just want to mention that Peter put all this Zimmerit on. It's not store-bought Zimmerit. It's a putty that he used, and then probably a Tamiya trowel to make the Zimmerit itself. And he's just done a fantastic job. Better than a tack Zimmerit, I must say. This to me is more scale than the store-bought stuff. Because as you guys know, looking at research material, some tanks you see photographs of, you can't tell, possibly because of poor photography, but nevertheless, you can't even tell that there's Zimmerit on the tank until you really get close into it. And I think that is what Peter accomplished here with this 131 King Tiger. Is you have to really look close to see how fine that Zimmerit is. So he's done a fantastic job, and I really appreciate him lending it to us as a stand-in for our little project. But let's get back to fixing up this puddle. So all I'm going to do is mix up our colors, our buff, and airbrush it back into normal. And you can do this at any time if you use epoxy for water, or you use the Woodland Scenics method of creating water. Like I say, just paint over top, right over top of the water and everything. And I'm just going to just pour the Tamiya water again. But obviously I have to lay down a little buff. And because, as you guys know, I use a lot of thinner, you may have to let it sit for longer than normal. So I'll just let the cameraman move in close so he can see my repair job, and then we'll get back to it. All right. All right, so there's our little mistake that we made here. I'm going to paint right over the Tamiya clear with the buff. And that's it. Problem solved. I'll get a little, I have a little bit of green from the grass sitting in here. And a lot of the things though that Dave and I do with our projects is with pretty fine airbrushes. Like this is an Iwata Revolution, and I know that Dave uses a high performance Iwata. And you can't narrow down to the little spots that I've just nailed there with anything but a really fine airbrush. So just keep that in mind, guys. You're gonna have to get a fine airbrush to do basically the things that Dave and I talk about on the YouTube stuff. So anyway, those puddles are gonna sit now for a few minutes, and then I'll come back with my Tamiya Clear and pour the water again. And do you remember what I said about keeping everything level? What I meant by that was, let's say for instance this is our piece of styrene, and I don't lie it flat on the diorama. It's not lying exactly flat. It's tilted slightly. Well, if it's tilted slightly like so, and I'm talking like 0.5 millimeter or a 32nd of an inch, all the Tamiya Clear is going to do is pile up at that end of the thing. And that's what I meant when I said, you know, put a dime or a penny underneath your base just to make it balance again. Because if you get it wrong with your little pieces of styrene, which is easy to do, I mean, you know, it's not perfect when it comes to laying those down. Like I say, just put a penny or a dime underneath your diorama, and then you'll find that the water will settle at the level. So, like I say, it's easy to make that mistake. It's not really a mistake. 89 degrees versus perfectly flat, or 1 degree up or 1 degree down. It's obvious that the water will find its leveling point. So all you do is just, like I say, easy problem to solve. Just work it out by putting a shim underneath your diorama. Okay, so what we will do is we'll let the diorama sit for a few minutes. Let this buff grab for 10 minutes or so on the surface that we just put it on, and then we'll go back and pour some Tamiya Clear and make some new water underneath there. So let's get talking about the track itself. Thank you very much, and we'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, so as you guys know, this series on the King Tiger has been, I think we're up to series or episode 17 or 18 now. I don't know which episode it was. It was a long time ago that we lowered the suspension on the, and as you can see on the Laufer tank versus mine, the lowering of the suspension has been by half. So as you can see, let's find the turret. So you can see the difference in height. It shows up quite nicely on here. So one of the, like in scale, I don't know how hard it is, how difference is, but certainly Peter's is a couple feet in real life higher than mine. But one of the things that looks kind of silly is not using, because I use the kit tracks, as you guys know, you have to then wrap it around the sprockets and then lower it down. And we've lowered it extra because of the torsion bar problem with the explosion in the tank. So what I'm going to do now is just show you guys, because these are not Fruel tracks, they're not weighted, of course. I'm just going to show you guys how to weight them. But one of the things that's a disadvantage to what we've done here, we've done a lot of mud work in here, and painting and crackling of old dirt, and you know, the decay and everything of this sitting here for say a week or 2 weeks. All the crackling of this mud gets covered up once I put the fenders on. So one of the things, and like the Loffer effort here, if I put all this sort of stuff on here, there would be no purpose in doing all this sort of stuff. And so what I'm going to do, and I'll do it on camera though, I'm just going to cut off these fenders. I'm just going to take my wire cutters and just nip them off, and then off camera I'll patch it up a little bit. But it makes no sense to go through all this effort if you're then going to do this kind of thing. So and it's all about pre-planning and everything, but you don't realize how this is all going to turn out. But fortunately for myself, it's turned out well enough that I want to show it off. So what I'm going to do is just cut these two fenders off as if they've been battle damaged, and like I say, that's going to take me all of 30 seconds. It's the sanding and the fine tuning with a file and everything that's I'll do off camera, but you guys will see me nip away at these with the Tamiya nippers. But nevertheless, let's talk about lowering this track. One of the nice things about this track versus the olden days is that Tamiya has changed its formula, I think, for the rubber. Because now this will take crazy glue, and I will just start at the back wheel here and put a little bit of crazy glue on that back wheel, and start showing off the weight of the steel track itself. And again, because I put so much mud on these tracks, it wouldn't be any value to me to put ferrule tracks on. I like ferrule tracks. I've used them extensively in the past, but just not on our old derelict. If I was doing a dragging one and he was in motion, if I was doing it, with a crew and all that sort of stuff, I might, be showing ferrule tracks. But because our guy has been knocked out and he's... now, having said all that too, knocked out track with it broken and having it all dangling and everything amongst all the wheels, that's also a good look for a knocked out tank too. So, don't forget to do that if need be, and the best way to do that is with ferrule track. So, but anyway, in any event, let's okay, so we're gonna tap into this wheel right here. That is our targeted wheel. Just on the surface there, I'm gonna put some crazy glue, and you'll understand why in a second. But once I'll just grab some crazy glue out of the tin here, rub it on the top. And you have to be careful doing this because, as you guys know, crazy glue is high gloss. And if you blow it, you're back to faking it with, your powders and everything, trying to hide the high gloss. So let's just let that sit for a minute. And if there is any high gloss showing, it's easy to camouflage with our powders. Okay, so now you can see, gentlemen, how number one, how the torsion bars have given. I'm pretty sure on film you can see the height of this Peter Loffer's King Tiger versus the one that I built. And so as you guys know, I lowered the suspension by half to show the torsion bars burned out. But what happens also too is the wheels obviously come up a little bit. So the gap here is going to be less than, say, if, so it doesn't look like you will see King Tigers in their photographs as a running tank. The wheels have come up and given away. So, but there's how that crazy glue has made that store-bought rubber band track, look as if it's been, weighted and what have you. But now, obviously, I still haven't cut this off. So, so let me just move the 131 out of the way. And what you're going to do, people are afraid of the next thing I'm going to do. But don't be. All you have to do is, you know how the aircraft guys tease the modeling tank guys about, you guys get away with murder. If you don't like something or something goes south, you can always put mud on it. Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take advantage of that. We're going to put mud on it. So one of the things, as you know, I've done in construction of this vehicle, and it's more or less for film versus versus how I normally build. But this thing totally comes apart. So now, and I can pop this out, our little hatch at the back. But now I have almost just the Tamiya hull plus the screens. So this is basically almost out of the box top of the hull. So all you do, guys, and take your sharp, don't use wire cutters and all that sort of stuff. Use the really sharp Tamiya cutters, and then just have and again, photographic reference. But I know, having studied the photographs, and also too, the Mike Rinaldi King Tiger that's on Tank Art 4 also has its fenders knocked off. And that was a study earlier today as well, taking the Rinaldi King Tiger and doing the same. So basically, take your nippers and away you go. Now, keep in mind too, there's a hinge here. You want to keep that hinge as part of your model. So I'm just going to, as tragic as it may sound, I'm just going to cut this off. All right, so we're down to here. Go a little further. And presto, we're already off. And that's, like I say, guys, there's no sense in doing all this groundwork on these tracks and then covering them up like this one is. So let's get close in. So a little pre-planning on my part should have taken place a month ago. I wouldn't have had to sit here and do that and nip that all off. But nevertheless, now we put it back on. And now look what we have. We can easily show. And of course, I'm going to get a fine file and do that sort of thing on the front of that hinge here. And I'm going to do the same over here as well. But I'll do that one off camera. But now you can see the muddy track and what have you. Now, speaking of track, we also have, seeing it, there you are, the finished thing. Now what we have here is also the track that hangs on the side of the tank. Now these obviously are not going to weather like these ones. They're not going to gather mud. But they are going to sit here like so. Now, you guys also know how much I like special projects. And making little jacks and little pieces of exhaust and all that sort of stuff become one little project. And you have to do the same with these pieces of track. If you do have tank art at home, the fourth in the Rinaldi series, right on the cover of the book is the King Tiger. I think he painted the dragon one, but nevertheless, the track looks amazing. The spare track sitting on the edge of the side of this, and there's two reasons for this. Obviously, it's extra protection. That's one of the reasons they put it on. Also to use for use on the sidetrack. So anyway, I've painted the one on the bottom, and have not weathered the one on the top. So what I'll do is I will now weather the one on the top with a little bit of oil paint. I've used I like to call it the manhole color, but it's basically XF9 mixed with NATO black XF69, and that's how we come up with this sort of track color. Maybe a little more NATO black added than the XF9, and then gone with oil paints and began weathering it. So I have industrial earth, I have ochre, and I have a little bit of Winsor Newton orange here on my palette, right in here. And between those three colors, I will be able to find a rust color. Now, Dave Forrest, he uses I think life colors for his spare tracks and what have you. Always look fantastic. So get into your comfort zone with which type of paint. Obviously, the life color is going to dry pretty quick, but I'm going to use oil paints for my spare track rust and weathering. So anyway, I'll let the cameraman move in closer, and then we'll start weathering the tracks. Okay, so once again, guys, turn these into little projects. There's very few little tracks on the side of our tank. I'm not going to get into the tank tracks that might have been hanging here when the explosion hit, or the shells from the Sherman hit. I'm not going to get into damaging these steel tracks up and around this area, simply because I don't have any photographic reference. I don't have a clue what they would look like if the one that is supposed to be there, what it would look like, you know, being hit with the shell. So I'm not even going to try to pretend what it might look like. But anyway, so this one I did off camera ahead of time, and as you can see, there's a hint of rust just setting into that one. And now I will use the same palette and start doing this one. And by using oil paints, I have a lot of time as far as moving around these paints. With the other kind of, like say an acrylic based wash, I don't find I have the same control as if I was using oil paint. So my preference is oil paints. Then I have the odorless thinner. And the nice thing too, guys, if you don't like what you've done, oil paints are pretty forgiving. You can go back to them and sort of almost tomorrow, 48 hours later it would probably be a trick, but certainly within 24 hours you could probably still move these oil paints around a little bit. So if you don't like what you've achieved, then just go back and touch them up a little bit. There, so in a very brief time, and now this is going to dry, and it's going to dry similar to what this one has done. So off camera, I may even hit this with a blow dryer, and if it doesn't sit nicely on there, now also too, as we know, there's a little bit of a latch that sits here. It's not really a latch, but more of a, I don't know what you'd call it. It just supports the track from hanging off of these, and I will put those on as well, and then link these back up again. Now, if I really was building a competition model, I would take a pin vise and I would drill a hole all the way through. I'd put that extra rod that hangs down, I would put a rod through there with a piece of brass or something. But I'm just doing this for my own little cabinet at home. I'm not too worried about a competition model at this moment. I know that the Chattanooga U.S. Nationals is nearby, coming up in August. So I will start a project where all this kind of stuff equivalent will be done. There's no sense in traveling all that way and not doing those kinds of things. That's what the kind of things that the judges look for. So drilling, like I say, drilling a hole all the way through each and one of these little pieces of track would be necessary, and a piece of wire through it. But for our little project, no need to do that. So now what I'm going to do is, obviously this tank has been missing a barrel for a long time. I'm going to paint the barrel momentarily. I'm going to, I've put the hairspray on it, and I'm going to paint it yellow and then chip off the hairspray, and I will do that momentarily. I'll get rid of these oil paints. If you get this on your shirt or on your pants or anything, it's not coming out. So let me get rid of all the stuff that's around here in regards to the oil paint, and then we'll move into painting the barrel, and then we're almost done our project. Okay, so as you guys know, that throughout all the episodes, our poor little king tiger never had a barrel. So today we're painting the barrel. Now the nice thing about our project is king tiger, especially late in the war, the barrels were swapped in and out from the depot or from tanks that had been knocked out, but the barrels were fine. You know, we're talking late in 44, early 45 here. So the possibility of this barrel not being the same one as this our tank started with, 214 started with, are probably pretty good. So matching up the exact color and that sort of thing, don't panic, it's not necessary. But I am going to paint some green on this and weather it. But as you guys saw, I painted over top of our iron color because there, and I also have covered this with hairspray because I'm going to put some scratches in it, some wear and tear in it. So we'll just let that sit for a second while I put the airbrush away. I'll fire up some nice warm water to expose the scratches from there, the crew and what have you. Okay, so during our project, in all our episodes, as you guys know, there's been a lot of hairspray technique used. Probably this is the third or fourth time that we've started with the hairspray. Just to walk through, I painted it with the iron color. I put the hairspray on about 1 hour ago. Then half an hour ago I put a second coat of hairspray on. Then, as you guys just saw, I put on the yellow color, and now it's time. So there's 2 coats of hairspray. One 1 hour ago and one a few moments ago. Now, what am I doing putting scratches on the barrel? Just because of the position of where I'm going to do the scratching, the would be the places where the crew would be grabbing it, stepping up on it, and they, as you know, wear the steel-soled shoes. So just let that water sit on there a minute, and then we'll start to. There we go. So just on the top of the barrel, there's just a few little scratches, and they're almost invisible. I don't even know if the camera can pick this up. But by using a little stir stick from Starbucks, it's not very aggressive. You know, I've used our little Tester's old $1 or $2 paintbrush that everybody has become familiar with when it comes to hairspray. But then just by using something that's not too aggressive, And you guys can see that there's just a little bit of exposure there. And that's almost enough. There'll be a little bit underneath where the guys grab maybe, but just in general, and maybe, you know what, why don't we take a little bit of the scratching out here too. But certainly, you don't need a lot. You don't want it also to look like a pine tree, guys, or an evergreen tree. It's not going to cause these scratches. As you guys know, the Germans painted these tanks. You see them coming out of the bogs in 2015 or 2018, and they're coming out of bogs, and they still have the nice paint on them. I mean, they used good quality paint, so it's not really necessary to go too crazy on this chipping effect. They just didn't chip the way one might think they do. We all think that it was a pretty straightforward thing. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a delicate little coat of one of our colors on there. So let me just dry this off with a blow dryer. Get rid of the water that's out there, and then I'm just going to put a little skim of oil paint on it, just to harmonize it a little bit. So let me dry this off, and then we'll move forward, put new oil paints on. All right, so like all the tanks I do, I normally give them a wash of industrial earth, which I'm about to do. It's just one of those great colors that just ties everything together. And lots of thinner, of course. It's just a dirty, grimy color. But I think in all my tanks, my Stewart, even though it's, bright green, and all my German things, normally end up with a little bit of industrial earth. It's almost a signature, I think, for the 35th scale tank guys. It's one of those great 502 colors. I think it's number 92. Now, if I was going to add a little bit of green to follow the green that's in our tank, my process for that is a little different, say, than Rinaldi's. I would choose our appropriate color, spray the camouflage on the barrel, and then with a sponge and our manhole cover type of color, just sponge on a few more nicks and scratches on over top of the green. Mike Rinaldi is an amazing modeler, and he would use hairspray over underneath the green and underneath red brown and blah blah blah, and God bless him. But if for myself, I would just be doing it over top of this yellow, putting green on, and then with a sponge. I just find that a sponge is not as good as using the hairspray technique, so I would just sort of fake it with the sponge and just do a few little knickknacks on it. But we'll leave doing the green and the red to Mike Rinaldi and that crew. But let's just see how that's going to fit on there. And then we're going to put the whole kit and caboodle on top of here. And our little diorama is almost complete. I will study the barrel a little bit once it's dry. Obviously it's in high gloss right now because of the thinner and the oil paints. But as that tones down, it might read funny on our little diorama. And therefore I'll have to go back to the drawing board with a little bit of green camouflage or maybe a little bit of this red. And but one of the things, as you guys know, I was trying to fix up earlier was our water. So now you use Tamiya Clear to do that. And I know too that you have to use a little pouring cup that has a little spout on it. Now not everybody has one of those in their toolbox. So another way to pour the water on is just with our little eyedropper. So the one that we repaired, I will just drop on here. Because what you need here is control. So pouring our little Tamiya jar sideways and having it spill out isn't the answer. But a little eyedropper, or what we used the other day, our little spout, is what we need. So there's our repair all fixed again. And our little diorama is all but concluded. Now, one of the differences you'll see, especially if you see this diorama at a model show, is that the Willys Jeep that we used as a stand-in for our photographer, that was built by a modeling friend of mine by the name of Tony Bell. It had Canadian markings on it, and obviously we're doing an American. So I don't want to get going down that road of also building a Willys Jeep and all that sort of stuff to conclude on our diorama. We'll just pretend that that was our American photographer's Jeep. And what I will do, like I say, when you see this possibly at Chattanooga or Amps in the spring in Buffalo, this diorama will likely be there, and you will see the appropriate Jeep with the appropriate American markings on it and what have you. So next time I'm with you guys, which is just in a couple days, this whole project will be completed, less the Canadian markings on our Jeep, and our figure will be started, but we are just about finished. And it's been a great project. It's been fun talking to you guys every week, and if you have any questions, drop me a line or give me a phone call. As you also know too, that Hornet Hobbies is closing down, and I'm retiring, but I'm not retiring from the YouTube. The YouTube channel will remain, and I've got lots of things to tips and all that sort of stuff, and Dave, who's an expert modeler, has some great tips moving forward in 2019. So even though I'm retiring from the retail side of it, my YouTube channel is going to continue. So it's been a real pleasure, and I hope to see you guys soon. Talk to you then. Take care.